before we jump into the actual demonstration, let's discuss what we're going to run with. So here's the storyline for us to follow. Let's say there is a corresponding QA branch, and we want to make sure that we can connect this and have a repository set. So that's our very first use case, which is we're going to define our connection to Git, and we're going to make sure we can push certain branches or just have a sync done, so to speak. And that's going to be our first step, where our repository is set and we're good to go. Of course, the key aspect here is you're not going to have just a singular user. There's going to be a developer coming in. Now, of course, you can assume that this is for new requirements. This could be for updates and any other use case as well. So now you'll have a QA user and a dev user using their respective branches. And the dev user is going to first make sure that they create a fork where they can fetch the existing QA test cases itself. That's one of the key aspects. The dev is not starting by complete scratch. They have everything prepared for them directly from the QA branch itself. They're going to perform set transformation changes, which could be updating data flows in terms of, say, updating access keys, which could have been updated, or credential set, which could have been updated. There could also be updates in the existing rule sets, and of course, addition of new test cases as well. So there's a lot of things that can happen from a dev side. This isn't to show that the QA might be silent at that point. There could be a lot of changes from the QA perspective as well. And so the last thing we're going to discuss is when we kind of merge them together, how exactly things work out, how we make sure that data sources are in sync, the credentials are working across, and everything with that. And with these few set of systems, you should be good to go for any complex set of deployments as well. All right, with that, let's jump into the use case itself. What I have here are two sets of users. Firstly, I have a dev user, that's right there, and I have a QA user as well. All right. So now let's discuss what we want. The first thing we want to do is kind of set the story. This is a QA branch, as you can see, and we have a dev branch as well. And within this QA branch, I have a singular data test case here. And again, the key aspect here is this could be hundreds of test cases as well. This is, of course, the initial commit. And before you push anything into an existing branch, you need to define your connections to that. To this end, go into configuration, go into integration right there, and define the Git integration that you would like to work with. Now, in my example, I'm going ahead with an ADO Git repo. But as you will see, we have a lot of providers that we support inherently. If you want to see things in a lot more detail as to what exact credentials are needed and where to fetch them from, feel free to always go ahead to this question mark right there. There's online help, and our help documentation contains complete end-to-end systems with diagrams as well to help you get started with an integration system. Of course, if you still have more questions, the support portal is right there, so feel free to reach out to us in case that's a use case that you're working with. All right, say once you have signed up within the application itself, the thing that you have to go into is user settings right here, and here you have personal access tokens. These personal access tokens, as you can see, I've generated a few for my use cases already, and you can always generate your very own depending on the set of permissions you would like to go ahead with, particularly in releases. More information can be found within the documentation. So that's the first step, where we make sure that our integration is working as expected. So I'm just going to test this particular connection. And we see that everything is working as intended. Our integration is working as expected. Now, let's make sure we have our branch ready as well. So I'm going to go ahead into branches. Of course, this is going to differ for your specific repository, but it follows the same principle. I'm going to create a brand new branch. Let's call it QA branch. We can base it off the main branch itself, and we can create this corresponding branch. There we go. QA branch is ready right here. Now, I'm going to make sure that I go into branch mapping and I add my container QA branch to the list of branches that I see right there, which is QA branch, which is again using the same name for ease of understanding. And I'm good to go. There we go. Now we have defined our connection with Git, and as you can see, we see a star right here representing that there are changes which have not been synced with our Git repository. Of course, you can do it right here, and it's going to basically lead you into the Git section right there. And the first thing you're going to do is, of course, sync. So if I go into branches right now, you will, as expected, you'll see that this particular branch is completely empty. There won't be any files in there. And once we click a quick refresh, which is once we commit, and let's call this our initial commit. Now we have done our initial commit, and if I go back to my system, let's do a quick refresh here if I can. There we go. Our test case has been added. So that's our first step done. If I go back to the slides that we are working with, we are right here.
For further questions, feel free to reach contact@datagaps.com. Request a free demo. Scan the QR code below. Thank you.